What's that?
It's London.
Yeah, when we went.
I checked.
Court, the old yard.
I don't know. It's outside of what's that Burroughs Market? This is a sign for this is Burroughs Market sign there. You just, yeah.
Trying to think what that big church.
It looks like the major.
Yeah, or this tower. I think that's a
Is that the tower?
tower. I think it's the Tower of London.
Oh, the Tower Bridge.
Oh yeah. From this thing. I changed my background on my computer to a rotating picture of my various vacations. So I don't know exactly which picture that is, but I think that's a Burroughs Market. I'm sure that's what the sign looks like with that glass.
Is Neil's yard, that dairy place, sell curdled milk?
I'm sure they do. They wouldn't be. They have to lose their license for being British if they didn't. So
Yeah.
they get kicked out of England. All right, there we go. Bring it back then. All right, so we left off last week with Thomas Becket. Just a refresher on where we left off, going to the Flemish region of Belgium, and meeting with the Chief Justice or Justiciar Richard de Lucy, who initially was trying to help him, but eventually that Thomas Becket was kind of a mess. I think Becket at this point in his life was just offending everybody. He was just pissing everybody off. It's just amazing. Sometimes the people we look at and are named as saints.
You mean there's hope for us?
What's that?
You mean there's hope for us?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So then Becket went here to this is the ruins of the Abbey of Saint Bertin. This is where his next stop. So he went from Belgium to France, and he and de Lucy went to Pope Alexander, and Pope Alexander kind of wanted to back Becket and support him, but there's a couple times in history where there were two popes at once, and
that's totally incomprehensible to me because the instructions are quite clear.
yes, right. Well, there's disagree. I don't know how. Yeah,
for the Catholic Church, there shall be one.
Right, and there were a couple. I think twice in history.
Yeah.
Do you know, Janice? Is there more than twice or just twice?
I don't know how many times, but they had schisms within the Roman Catholic Church. And
Yes,
they
were all.
the Pope in Avignon, which was a French location for a long time, as well as the one in Rome.
Right. Yeah, Avignon was the secondary pope.
Well,
Right.
I don't know if he was actually secondary, because I think he was there because of the strength of the French Empire
Oh, right.
compared to the Roman.
Nelson said they were trying to work out the divine right of kings, and that also had to do with who was the most powerful king and who was being
Yes.
backed by which pope. So there was a lot of the Germanic kings.
Actually united, and the Italians won.
Here you go, the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa.
Yeah, the Holy Roman Emperor, which was always is a great. There's several oxymorons in that because there's nothing holy about it, and it wasn't a Roman Empire. I'm sure you all know the Holy Roman Empire was an attempt to reunify Europe, primarily under the rule of the Pope, and ultimately Rome was dropped out of the Holy Roman Empire. Wasn't even part of it for much of it was mostly a German, some of France, and
Which
it
is
was
what
the Holy Roman Empire. Huh?
Barbarossa was one of the Germanic, and his name means Redbeard. So.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Barbarossa. Oh, yeah, it sure does. I didn't even think about that. Well, anyway, he wanted to back the other Pope, Victor IV, and Pope Alexander was afraid Henry might also do that, so he was hesitant to back Becket and kind of push them just to make a compromise and to put it off for a while. So all this politics going on behind the scenes on Becket's life. So he stayed at this abbey for a while, and at that point started a bunch of diplomatic activities to counteract King Henry II, which included a lot of I forget the name of the word when you kick people out of the church. Excommunications, yeah. King Henry sent envoys to King Louis VI of France requesting that no sanctuary should be given to his former archbishop. And King Louis of France asks, so, well, who's deposed the archbishop? He basically says, you know, I'm a king just as King Henry II. I don't have the power to depose a bishop or any clerk. So how does he have the power to depose a bishop? So the French king was standing on his side and the side of the church.
Which church?
Well, yeah, right. One of the Catholic churches in area.
All in the name of God.
Yeah.
Yes.
So this is just where he goes now, in the middle of France. As we see him moving south from Belgium. Hey, at least he got to see Europe, right?
Yeah. And the vineyards, I mean, the monasteries and places all had their own vineyards.
Yeah, right.
So I see they lived pretty well.
Right, yeah.
Maybe that's.
So King Henry II retaliated by exiling about 400 of Becket's friends and relatives.
Oh my gosh.
And King Henry also warned the Cistercian Brotherhood that if they continued to harbor Becket, he would confiscate all of their property within his domains.
Nice. And that sounds a little like some future Henry.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. Confiscated the land of the church, yeah, sure. And so King Louis wanted to try to avoid that and provided Becket with a different sanctuary at the Benedict Abbey in St. Columba near Sens. So that's where the map is. So that was his next harbor to go hide in. And like Peter said, there was wine everywhere, so it was fine. In the summer of 1165, the Pope ordered Thomas not to provoke the king in any way before Easter. Just leave him alone before Easter.
No, that's an interesting statement.
Yeah, well, because he wanted Henry's support, that he was the Pope and not the other guy.
Yeah.
So let's just not poke the king for a while.
Until Easter.
Right. I don't know why. I guess there was something happening that maybe it would be settled that he would be Pope and not the other guys. Just leave him alone for a few months, crying out loud. So Becket did, and once it expired, that's when he started doing all these excommunications against English bishops and barons. Excommunicated a lot of people, actually, and several key people, John of Oxford, Richard of Ilchester, Robert de Lacy, who was the guy that he went to originally in Belgium, who started to support him and then went against him. So yeah, let's excommunicate him.
Good Lord.
And Jocelyn, see, these are people that opposed the constitutions of Clarendon. Remember, those are the ones where Becket, we talked about that before, Becket was, the king wanted the councils of Clarendon constitutions were trying to restore the power from the church back to the king. And Becket and his bishop and all the bishops were opposing that. They wanted the church to keep the power. It was back to the whole thing about clergy having special roles on court trials. So all it goes back to that thing. This is just blown up and become compounded. Everybody getting revenge on each other with excommunications and banishing people. And in the end, it's all a fight over power.
Notice how Normanic all these names are.
Oh yeah, right.
Robert de Lacy, Jocelyn.
Yeah, yeah.
It's only 100 years after 1066.
True. That's a good point. Yeah, yeah.
3 generations.
Yeah, so lots of French influence.
The commanding people were the French, the Normans.
Right. Yep. At this point in the history. Yeah, I find English history really fascinating. You have a couple centuries of the Germans who invaded ruling, and then the Vikings took over for a minute, and then the French took over.
Mm-hmm.
I think the British Isles is such a blend of everybody. And who were the original people? Were the Celtic people, really, before all that, right?
That's where they got the red-headed Irishmen, though,
Right.
from the Vikings.
Right.
Ooh, we're looking at one right now. Jim. He's lost his accent.
Anyway, the Pope tried to mediate between Henry and Becket by appointing 2 papal legates to bring the parties together. And in November in 1167, the legate stopped at Sens, where he still was harboring the monastery. They conferred at length with Becket, but no solution was reached. Of course, because he's very bullheaded. Later, Henry met the legates outside Caen, was told that they had been unable to change the Archbishop's mind. And the king wasn't also not in any mood for compromise. So, just think about these 2 guys that were best buddies and carousing together, and now they're absolute opposed and refuse to give in to each other in any way.
Mhm.
And he was disgusted with the Pope's ambassadors and was said to have said, I hope to God I never set eyes on a cardinal again. Oh, did you want to?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's how I'm taking my notes. So writing it down. Thank you.
Sure. So then this is his next stop. He moves on to Montmirail Castle, which is east of Paris. Get a good tour of France.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting thing is I looked it up and the castle was already built. It pretty much looked like this when Thomas Becket went there. So his
Rapunzel's in this tower here on the end.
I think I see some blonde hair.
So 1168, his supporters were getting tired of being in exile. Becket says he'll try to get an agreement to facilitate an end to their exile. So he's going to try to work with the king a little bit. And so therefore in 1169, Henry and Louis met for a conference in Montmirail, which was on the border of the French and English domains. King Louis asked Becket to be present. And not surprisingly, their tempers flared and had another argument, and they both stormed out, damning each other. So nothing was accomplished, but it was really the first attempt in quite a while for the two of them to meet. Meanwhile, he still has the title of Archbishop of Canterbury. He hasn't been set foot on English soil in a couple of years at this point.
So how long did this conflict go on?
A few years. And so we get to 1170, everybody's very tired of it. And the Pope and Henry are both impatient for a settlement. There was a rumor that the Pope might put all of Henry's European people under interdict. Interdict is a mass communication and would include Henry's subordinates being absolved from allegiance to the king.
Ooh.
So that caught Henry's attention.
Mhm.
However, complicating the matter, at the same time, you were talking earlier about who was going to take over after King Henry. King Henry wanted to have his son, one of his sons who was also named Henry, coronated. Apparently back then it was not uncommon to coronate the next king prior to him becoming king, so that he would like seal his position, right? And normally the Archbishop of Canterbury would do the coronation, but there was no Archbishop of Canterbury available since he was in exile in France.
Mhm.
So he went to have the coronation done in York, I believe. Yeah, anticipatory coronation to ensure succession. And like I said, it was common in those days.
Yeah.
So they did the ceremony in York. And of course, Becket didn't like that because it's supposed to be done by the Archbishop of Canterbury. So this is just one more thing that got thrown in to complicate the issues and actually became a distraction from all the other issues. So then they had another conference. Now we're in July of 1170. They have a conference at Fredeville, halfway between Chartres and Tours, and Becket also was present by invitation. And at that point, the king agrees to hold a second coronation. We'll go ahead and coronate Henry II at Canterbury by the Archbishop of Canterbury. And they managed not to storm out of the meeting and curse each other. And there was some level of peace made. Again, though, it was kind of a distraction because there was this new problem. The coronation at the wrong place was really not the root of the problem. The root of the problem was the power issues that struggled between the Council of Clarendon, who has the power of the church or the king. And so it was a distraction. And they had some peace. They came to this agreement, but they didn't really talk about the root issues that started the whole. So they go out of this meeting with peace in their minds, but it was a distraction. And that became a problem because that was still an unsettled issue later on. But this is what led to Becket going back to England. So, hey, we've achieved some peace. We've achieved some agreement. I'm going back to Canterbury now. So December 1st, 1170. And everybody was glad to have him back. And now remember we talked about St. Alphege a few weeks ago. He was the Archbishop of Canterbury in the previous century. Clubbed to death by the Danes, an army of Thorkel the Tall. And so Becket says, Becket is quoted as having said to Alexander Llewellyn, one martyr, St. Alphege, you have already, another, if God will, you will have soon. So he's already seeing himself as a martyr with his return to London. And that's on Christmas Day in his sermon, he said to the congregation, I'm come to die among you. So he's made a couple of references to his impending death. I guess he realized that it was dangerous for him to go back to Canterbury.
Facing it, swear on.
Yeah, right. But then he also began to excommunicate more people. They're going to kill me, but I'm still going to antagonize the king. He attacked the Archbishop of York. I know. What a cantankerous old contrary human being. I know, right? Right?
Too much wine
Too much wine.
or killed too many brain cells or something.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some inbreeding there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His DNA wasn't right.
At that time, Henry was in Normandy, where the excommunicated bishops were, and they laid their cases before him. He was understandably weary of the whole affair and asked Roger of York what he should do. The Archbishop of York says, I assure you that while Thomas lives among you, you will have no good days, no quiet times, nor a tranquil kingdom. Which is
Nice churchman.
Which is when, that famous quote from the king saying, who will rid me of this troublesome priest, or something like that. Nobody's sure exactly what he said, but something of that nature. It was a response to the York, the Archbishop of York saying this. Which, of course, some knights took as a subtle hint to go and murder Thomas Becket. William de Tracy, Richard de Broughton, Hugh de Marville, and their leader, Reginald Fitzurse, took that as a literal order, and they searched out Thomas to make sure some serious harm came to it.
Some serious harm.
Confronted the Archbishop while I was having dinner at home. The four knights presented Thomas with their charges, insisted he accompany them back to Westminster. Thomas refused. And the knights were forced to withdraw. A short time later, Thomas was again confronted by the four knights, who now seemed to be drunk,
Oh, there you go. And you got it.
in the Canterbury Cathedral while service was ongoing.
Must have been a bad homily.
Once again, the knights insisted Thomas accompany them to Westminster, and once again, he refused.
Well, he was either very stubborn, he was very sure of his position, or maybe he was a little
Thick-headed,
thick-headed.
bullheaded.
And it's his.
So then the knights brandished their swords, and most of the congregation fled the cathedral in panic.
Well, yes.
It's a deck.
It's like someone coming with an AR-15.
Yeah.
Knights grabbed Thomas, but he stubbornly clung onto a column. One knight raised his sword to strike the archbishop, but a clerk leapt in between the two. His arm was cut off, or was badly slashed anyway. But the remainder of the blow went to Thomas's head.
Knock some sense into
Right. Well, I'm afraid not. Yeah, knocked all the sense quite out of
out
him.
of him, man.
Yeah,
Look at this gruesome illustration with the sword sticking in his head.
isn't that great? Yeah, I love that one.
They always have to show the means of, how someone was martyred.
I've
That's
seen
right.
many different artistic renditions of Thomas Becket with a sword in his head. Yeah, there's various. I had a hard time deciding which one to pick. There was also interesting.
He's doing the Louisville sign with his right hand.
He is said to have exclaimed in defiance for the name of Jesus and the protection of the church, "I'm ready to embrace death." A frenzy of sword slashes which caused one knight's weapon to shatter against the stone flooring. Thomas Becket was butchered on 20th of December, 1170.
Terrible way to end the year.
Yeah, I know. Almost made it to 1171, not quite.
1165.
It's time for us
No,
to
it's
go,
not.
people.
Oh, it is time to go. Okay.
Goodness.
Yes, thank
Just when
you.
we're having fun.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Dave.
Oh, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you for that lovely stone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to take what, will you take something home
All right,
to our
Toby's,
lesson?
I guess we're going to call it a close.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yep,
you.
see you next week.
Good to hear you.